How's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Hope you're living your best life. In today's video, we'll be looking at some sweet stories of revenge from the ProRevenge subreddit. I'll be discussing how to win prizes and get exclusive membership in our Discord channel, so stay tuned. Let's get right into it. Here's our cast. My sister, we'll call her Sarah for the story. My sister's ex-boyfriend, Paul. This ex-boyfriend's new wife, Jane, and the ex-boyfriend's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Doe. The oldest brother is Zeke, as well as my parents and myself. When I was 14 and my oldest sister, Sarah, was 22, we found out that she was pregnant with Paul, her boyfriend of 4 years. They immediately got engaged and they were really happy, for a time. Sarah had a horrible pregnancy. About 16 to 18 weeks in, the wonder of creating a human life evaporated within her. She developed hyperemesis, which if you don't know is really bad morning sickness. She was constantly in pain, she developed gestational diabetes, and just all around hated the experience. Around this time, Paul, the then fiancé, started getting sick of the complaining. I believe the argument was, "Your body is built to do this, it can't be that bad." Sarah was due around Valentine's Day and Paul's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Doe, were very excited, both about the grandkid and the fact that he could be born on a holiday. She was very against that and really hoped that her son wouldn't be born on a holiday, even one as small as Valentine's Day. Her birthday sometimes falls on Easter and she hates it, because it might make him feel that his day isn't very much about him. Well, Mrs. Doe says something like, "Well, if you name him Valentine or Valentino, then that'll make the day even more special to him." Again, sister hated the idea. She thought it was tacky, he'd be bullied for it, and just really didn't like the name Valentino. Paul loved it, but agreed to go with a more average name like Daniel or Jared. Fast forward to February, and she was ready to get this over with. Sarah had officially been put on bed rest because while standing or walking, her blood pressure took unexpected spikes and dips. I look back now and goodness do I feel bad for her. She was doing her best to avoid giving birth on Valentine's Day because, again, she didn't want him born on a holiday. Unfortunately, births happen when they happen, and that baby was going to come out on Valentine's Day, whether she wanted him to or not. I remember waiting out in the waiting room with my dad, brothers, and Paul, who couldn't stand to be in the delivery room because it was gross. I was so mad that he could have gone in but wouldn't because he thought my sister was gross while giving birth, whereas I had to stay outside because I was too young to go in with my mom and other sister. Dad went home with the youngest two brothers while the oldest, Zeke, stayed to watch me because I refused to leave. 16 hours after Sarah went into labor, my little nephew was officially part of the family on the evening of Valentine's Day. Unfortunately, Sarah was not okay. She had to have an emergency cesarean section, and while doing the operation discovered that the back of her uterus, facing her spinal cord, had a very large and very severe, although thankfully non-cancerous, tumor. When I say large, I mean it was twice the size of a standard uterus. The doctors were shocked and didn't understand why nobody had noticed it on an ultrasound. It accounted for her severe back pain and blood pressure issues. The doctors immediately went in for more surgery to remove the tumor, but sadly ended up having to perform a full hysterectomy. This meant that my nephew would be Sarah's only child. Now while Sarah was in for surgery, Paul was taking care of everything baby-related to make sure his son was okay. In my 14-year-old self's memory, I remember him being suitably distraught, but I didn't really pay much mind and spent my time in the waiting room with my mother and other sisters. Zeke, however, wanted to be a good future brother-in-law and make sure that Paul was okay. He found Paul filling out the baby paperwork on his own, looking, in my brother's words, like he had not a single worry in his mind. Zeke asked why Paul didn't wait for Sarah to fill out the paperwork, as she should have been put out of surgery within the hour, and Paul said that he just wanted her to get her rest and heal. That checked out with Zeke as he was 16 and didn't know any better at the time. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. No, he wouldn't. He knows how much she hates that name. And still, she'd need to sign the paperwork too. My fellow peoples of Reddit, I regret to inform you that Paul forged Sarah's signature on the paperwork and waited until she was out of surgery to hand said paperwork over. My sweet nephew, that was born on Valentine's Day, was named Valentino on his first official birth certificate. I still, to this day, don't know why Paul and his family were so insistent about the name. He had even picked out a different one with my sister. And before you asked, no, he was never brought up on forgery charges because his parents were witnesses to her signing the papers, even though they only got there at the last minute. So Sarah dumped him and got her son's name changed a month later. She was willing to do split custody with him because that's her son's father and she wants the kid to know him. But Paul vanished and she never heard anything back, which seemed weirdly out of character to us. Until a mutual friend on Facebook was tagged in his wedding pictures 6 months later. Paul had apparently started cheating on her not long after she got pregnant. Sarah was livid, but there wasn't much she could do, so she filed for child support and continued to live her best life. You go, Sarah. Until 6 years later. This is where the revenge starts, my friends. So Sarah has been a single mother for the past 6 years and has been amazing at it. At this point in my career, I've been a hairdresser for about 8 months at our local Great Clips. I'm working one day, and who is seated before me but Jane, Paul's wife, herself. I take her back for a trim, and she clearly has no idea who I am. That adds up because a mutual friend that still keeps in contact with Paul said that Jane doesn't know a thing. So she has no idea about Sarah, that she was the other woman, or that Paul actually has a kid that he's been infrequently paying child support for. She's in the dark on it all. I told myself not to be an ass and treat her like a normal customer, which I did. Now at this point, Jane was heavily pregnant, so a lot of our conversation was about that. She loved being pregnant, but it was hard. Her husband was so unsympathetic, big shocker. And she was due in 10 weeks and they still hadn't picked out a name for their baby girl. Ladies and gentle peoples, this was my chance. I asked what kind of name she was looking for and she said, I want something unique and unusual, but not ridiculous like Braytonley. You know the ones I'm talking about. And Paul had suggested so many already and she didn't like any of them. So I, conniving little weasel I am, said, what about Sarah? My sister's name isn't actually Sarah. She was named after an older family member that passed not long after she was born, but there was no female equivalent for his name, so our parents created one. It's a beautiful name and just what Jane was looking for. She loved it, she stuck by it, and I found out by stalking her Facebook months later that she had put her foot down about it and that was their daughter's name. Now Paul has a daughter with his ex's name to remind him every day about her, and to also remind him to pay his damn child support. Little nephew is 10 years old now with a new name and no contact with his biological father, though we do still sometimes call him Val as a family nickname. He likes it but doesn't want to bring it to school, so it's staying a family nickname. Sarah pretends to hate when we call him that in a joking way. As long as he likes it, she doesn't have a problem with it. And she's seeing a new guy who's really great and like a father to Val. What a great way to get back at a cheating, unsympathetic douche. Also, I feel like names like Valentino are cool to imagine yourself with for like 5 minutes, but after a while it kinda becomes annoying and you're glad that your name isn't actually Valentino. Sorry to all my Valentinos out there, but Val is a pretty sick nickname and seems like everyone in the family is cool about it now. So way back in the day, mid-90s or so, my family lived in a log cabin on 10 acres of land in a rural area 10 minutes or so out of town. It wasn't totally in the sticks, but you can definitely hear banjo music in the background sometimes. At the end of our nearly quarter-mile long driveway was one of those roads that was also technically a state highway. In the AM, I'd trudge down to wait for the bus, and when I got home, I'd grab the mail and carry it back. Until one Monday morning when I went out and noticed the mailbox was gone. On closer inspection, it looked like it had just been ripped out of the ground. Now, Dad was obviously not pleased. He went to talk with the county sheriff who happened to live a mile down the road. Turns out it had been happening up and down the road for months. Someone was tossing a chain over mailboxes and yanking them out with their vehicle. He suspected a guy down the road with his great big lifted four-wheel drive truck, but couldn't prove anything. Usually happened on Saturdays and Sunday nights, with people finding out in the morning. Also, it seems the nicer the mailbox, the bigger a target, and many had been hit multiple times. People had tried digging deeper, using more durable wood, etc. The guy just took it as a challenge and ripped them out again. Soft, sandy ground, and his truck was a monster. Well, Dad said, "Challenge effing accepted." A bit about my father. He's a steelworker with an engineering background and graduate degree. Built like a bear with forearms the size of my freaking legs. Most people looking at him would never think this monster of a man is also brilliant, but he is. The calm, cool type that almost never loses his temper. But wrong him, and God help you. So Dad goes to Lowe's and buys the fanciest, prettiest mailbox they sell. He then proceeds to install it on top of an 8-foot-long cylinder of 3-inch diameter hardened tool steel. But he wasn't done there. After digging down with post holers and dropping it in, he then filled it with quickset concrete. To really sell it, he then used some strips of 1/2-inch wood to cover the steel core of his now indestructible mailbox of doom. Primed and painted them so it looked like a standard 4-inch post. And even had my mom decorated with flowers and such, he wanted it to be as tempting of a target as possible. Didn't even take a week. I went out for school in the morning and found the mailbox right where it should be. Attached to it was 30 feet of chain and an entire hitch assembly. Ripped right off the truck's frame, sheared the bolts. It was marvelous to behold. Sheriff gets called over and dies laughing when he sees it. He went to the house of the guy that was suspected and sure enough, verified the damage to his truck, which matched. Fun fact, messing with the mailbox is a federal crime. As in, you go to federal prison, not those cushy state places. Dad was unofficially rewarded by the sheriff's department with a few cases of beer and some venison. And after that, every deputy in town would flash him a thumbs up whenever they saw him. So, I did a little bit of research and found that under United States Code 18 Section 1708, federal mail theft is in fact a felony, and if charged, you can be locked up in federal prison for up to 5 years and fines of up to a whopping $250,000. If that's what you get for taking mail, I wonder what the punishment is for taking the entire mailbox. Multiply that by the sheer number of mailboxes that this guy's stolen, plus the cost of fixing up a ripped up truck. I'm sure this guy's really going to regret messing with these fine people. I'm pleased to announce that I'll be giving away shoutouts at the end of my videos, and will be giving exclusive permissions for our new Discord channel, which is underway right now. To get a shoutout in a video, subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below of your favorite subreddit. To guarantee your exclusive spot in our Discord, do the same thing as the shoutout, but take a screenshot of my channel and submit it when the Discord opens. Tune in to the next video to see your shoutouts.